Have you ever tried something new and it felt impossible? In fact, maybe you had tried the same thing over and over and over again, trying to get a new workout routine, trying to get your calendar in order, trying to do something new, and it just felt like it was an uphill battle, so much so that you pretty much gave up. In this episode of Be a Better Lawyer, I'm going to share with you my secrets to moving past all of that and to begin doing brand new things, hard things, and doing them in a way that didn't feel like I was white knuckling through life. I didn't need more self discipline. What I needed was an entirely different way of thinking about how I was approaching these new things. And I'm going to share that with you today. So keep listening. Hello, my friend. How are you doing today? This has been an incredible week. I've had so many awesome things happening. And of course, even when you have awesome things happening, life is life, right? Like you have ups, you have downs. When you listen to this podcast, I don't share a lot of the downs, right? Like, because I'm here to give you the information that you need to continue improving your life. But I want you to know that I have those ups and downs too. Like just before I was trying to start recording this podcast, I'm ready to go. I got all my notes in order. I'm like trying to record. Like my cat does something in the other room that needs to be taken care of. There's dogs barking. I got to make sure I get this thing taken care of. Right. And I'm like, hey, wait a minute. I thought I was ready to go. And things happen, right? And then we notice ourselves maybe feel a little out of breath or we feel a little out of sorts. And I want you to know that I experience those same things. And then I just keep redirecting my mind over and over and over again. And I'm actually going to talk to you about that in this episode with the examples that I'm going to be sharing with you about how I left my job, how I learned how to manage my time and use a calendar, how I started to do these things, these things that people tell me like, "Wow, this is incredible. I can't believe you did this." And it wasn't magic. It was this mindset work. It was doing what I do every single day with myself, what I do with my clients, and what I share with you here on the podcast. It's a continuing project. We are all continually learning how to manage ourselves, manage our emotions, manage our minds, and learn how to create the results that we want in our life. So I want to just share that with you because this week has been amazing in so many ways, but there's always those things that come up that we are then in charge of, responsible for learning for ourselves to manage our energy, to manage our emotions and our mind. This week, I went to Powerhouse Women, which was a fabulous event led by Lindsay Schwartz. She brought together about 850 women, and it was fabulous. And I loved getting to meet all of those people. But I will tell you that that exhausted me, right? Being around all of those people was beautiful, and when I'm sitting in a hall for a day, I feel disconnected from nature. I feel disconnected from myself. And the energy of people, you can't control it, right? Like they are behaving in ways that isn't necessarily bad, but you can hear the stories. And especially if you're a mindset coach or you do mindset, you can hear people and all of their stories and all of their complaints. And when they share those with you, I just listen and I love learning from people. And at the same time, when I put myself in that area, in when I put myself in any work that I do, when I'm dealing with people's emotions, people's mindset, I have to be careful about how I manage my energy. Am I giving myself what I need? Am I spending that time outside like I need to? Am I leaving when I need to? And those are the things that I have become increasingly aware of that I need to make sure I give myself. And I've been doing it all this time, and I'm recognizing I need to give myself more because I'm asking bigger things of myself. Just like I'm going to be talking to you in this episode about, is because when you start asking bigger things of yourself, when you start putting yourself in situations where you're doing new things, whether it's networking or doing big things in your business, whatever it might be, you are going to feel uncomfortable and you're going to start learning new things about yourself. You're going to start learning, hey, I actually need to give myself different things, nourish myself differently if I'm going to be asking myself to do these kinds of things for myself. So I wanted you to know, just so you can hear it from me, if you're taking me as if you're listening to these podcasts, it's not like I know everything. I am constantly learning. I am constantly learning about myself, about other people. And that is life. That's what I believe we're here to do, is to continue evolving as human beings. And when we do that, we do things that feel like they were totally impossible before, and then they become possible. And that's really what I want to talk to you here about today. Before we jump into creating safety and creating that environment that you need to do the big things that you want to do, I want to share with you something that can also help you with that. So, I recently announced to my email list that I am doing a 3-month program called Timepiece for Lawyers. And it is something that I have been dreaming about, daydreaming about, and wanting to do for so long, because I know that not every lawyer that I talk to in a one on one strategy session is able to afford one on one coaching or even wants one on one coaching. They might want something totally different. And so I wanted to create an environment, a group of compassionate lawyers, lawyers who are struggling with time management, struggling with perfectionism and procrastination and self doubt. I wanted to bring you together because that's where I was. And that's something that is so important to me, is to give you the environment, the safety, the support that you need to change everything in your practice and do it at a fraction of the one on one cost. So, Timepiece for Lawyers is a program that I've designed to help you every step of the way, not just learn the skills, but implement the skills. So everything that I just shared with you about the self-doubt and the procrastination, I have experienced all of that when I was building my business while I was practicing as a prosecutor full time. I experienced so much shame and fear, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in this episode. Those kinds of things are normal, but we need to create a supportive environment for ourselves. We need to ask for help. We need to be able to do those things. And I wanted to create a space for you. You can get all of the details about what we're doing in this program, the cost, all of that good stuff, if you go to dinacataldo.com/timepiece. That's PEACE. So when you go to dinacataldo.com/timepiece, you are going to get all of the details, all of the dates, everything you need to know. And I want you to know something, because I understand how my brain worked, and maybe your brain does this too. Is we tell ourselves things like, I just don't know if now's a good time. And I would tell myself that over and over and over again, and I would put off doing something new over and over and over again. And what I want to offer to you is that now is the perfect time. In fact, I designed this program so that it ends before Thanksgiving. So you're going to have all the holidays. You're going to have so much space because you're setting yourself up for success right now. You're setting yourself up to really think differently, to be different in your practice and in your life. And you are going to thank yourself for this. Your family's going to thank you for this. So I highly encourage you to sign up. It's going to end on August 31st. We're going to cut off the date there. So if you're listening to this before August 31st, go to dinacataldo.com/timepiece, PEACE, and sign up. When you do, I'm going to give you an email with some questions that are going to give you so much clarity. It is going to be an amazing program. I'm so excited for this. Thank you for listening to this podcast. If you've been taking what you've learned, I know so many of you have contacted me and said, "Oh, I got such a great result here and there and there." And what I also want to share with you is that this program is so much more than the podcast, because we're going to be coaching you and I, we're going to be doing Q&A. You and I are going to be doing this work together. Okay? So when you have a podcast and you're listening passively, yes, you can absolutely gain things from that. But one of the things that we forget, and at least I did too, is that I needed to have these fundamentals in place before I started doing bigger things like building my podcast, building my business, leaving my job, growing my business, right? Those kinds of things, we tend to think that, oh, when I work harder, I'll be able to grow my practice. But what really needs to happen is we've got to have the fundamentals in place, and the calendar is 100% the fundamental to do anything big in your life. I absolutely wholeheartedly know this to be true in my bones because that is what I needed being such a busy lawyer, going from, hearing to hearing, rushing around, doing all the things, having 70 cases in my trial load at one point. I know that the key to my sanity, to having a life, to my having my health was to continually practice putting what I preach into practice. So, this is what I'm going to share with you. I'm going to share with you everything I know. I'm going to share with you so much, and you're going to learn from the other lawyers who are in this group. I highly encourage you to join this program. Go to dinacataldo.com/timepiece, PEACE, and let's get started. All right, my friend, let's jump into this episode. So I'm really excited about this because I know that for me, and I didn't think this was a thing, I needed to create safety to fail because you know that getting results in whatever area of your life that you want requires action, and the growth that we want, the evolution that we want, requires action. Doing something new requires us taking new action, and we learn, we expand by doing those things, by continually to do them. But here's the thing: doing things often leads us to do things that don't go off as we had intended or as we have planned, right? To a lot of us, me included, I would call this a failure at the time. Now, I don't call this a failure. I call this learning. And sometimes it still feels like a failure. It doesn't mean I don't feel shame. It doesn't mean I don't feel bad when something doesn't go the way I wanted to. It just means I'm not stuck in it. I'm not spinning in it as long as I used to because I've practiced these skills over and over and over again. And I've created safety for myself to do new things, watch them maybe not go the way that I had intended them to do, and then keep going. And that's what I want to share with you here today because you can feel those feelings and continue moving forward. And you don't have to stay stuck in those feelings. You can learn how to create safety for yourself so that you can have those failures. And we can give ourselves what we need so that we can keep moving forward. And we've got to do things, and I've talked about these in other episodes, so I'm not going to go in depth here, but we become aware of the voices as separate from ourselves, like that voice that tells us you should be working harder. That's not our voice. That's voices of our parents, of our teachers, of maybe some law firm owners, of maybe people we've surrounded ourselves with in the past. That's not our true voice. What we need to do to create that safety is to begin strengthening and cultivating the voice of inner knowing. We're kind to ourselves every single step that we take, whether we're moving forward towards our goals or we're moving backwards and we're watching ourselves saying, why isn't this going faster? We just need to keep cultivating that voice to keep moving forward. And when we do, we can do a million things we never thought we could do. We can move mountains. So I want you to know that this one skill, creating safety for myself, has allowed me so much peace and has allowed me to do really hard things and do things that maybe my brain told me, like, is this a good idea? Do we even want to do this today? Don't we just want to sit on the couch and watch TV? And I keep coming back to these practices over and over again. And it really comes down to mindset. And our mindset is always going to be something we return to work through each and every step of these. So I wanted to talk about two particular examples of times when I have needed to put creating safety into place and what it looked like when I first started, and then what it looked like after I started. And what I mean by that is what it looked like before I started, the mindset and the results I was getting from that mindset, and then the after, when I really was creating safety for myself, what was happening differently when I was making that happen for myself. And I want to start by just sharing with you that there's so many areas of our life where we can begin creating safety, but it all starts with our mind. We're going to be talking about actions, how to create safety with your actions, but everything starts at the root. What is the cause of everything? And it's always what we're thinking about that new thing that we want to try, that new idea that we have that we want to implement, that new habit we want to create. Anything new that we want to create requires a mindset that's going to help us make it happen. So, if we're just looking at, for example, my very first example here is starting a calendar, really starting to manage my time. That's a circumstance. It's just something that exists in the world. There's no emotion attached to it. It's very neutral. But then we get the human brain involved in thinking about starting a calendar, thinking about creating one and sticking to it. And our brain can go into insane places. I will share with you where my brain went when I first was introduced to this idea of managing my time. One was I just can't do it. It's impossible. Like, I can't do it because I'm always having files dropped on my desk. I can't do it because I'm constantly in trial. I can't do it because, and you just fill in the blank with all the things my brain told me I couldn't do and why I couldn't do it. It was a total victim mentality that I had. I was not taking any responsibility. I was saying everything, all the problems were outside of me. And when we do that, we become so incredibly powerless, and it's a horrible place to be. It feels awful. And anytime I notice myself going there, now because I've practiced creating safety so much, I can bring it back. It's okay. I bring it back. I know the mindset I need. I bring it back. I remind myself of what I'm doing. I've seen evidence of it and I keep coming back to it. But when you first start something new, you don't think that way. You think, oh my gosh, this is going to be horrible. I mean, I've tried this a million times and it never worked before. And, this is what I see, the reasons why I can't do it. And, maybe it's just going to take too much time. I should really just jump into the work because I just have so much work. I don't have time to do a calendar, or maybe next week I'll do it. These were all thoughts that came into my head. But of course, when we're thinking thoughts like this, and maybe you can even feel it in your body right now, just me saying those thoughts out loud, you're feeling fear, worry, anxiety, pressure, dread. All of those feelings block us from taking actions that we need to create the result that we want. In this case, it's managing my time and getting more done, being more productive, being more present with myself and with family and loved ones. So all that fear, worry, etc., leads us to, first of all, just not creating a calendar, right? Listening to those voices and listening to what that voice tells us is possible or not possible. And that voice is not our voice. It's the voice of bygone times. Okay. We want to get present and we want to start changing things. I'm going to share what that looks like in just a second. You don't, because you're not doing a calendar, you don't have data to evaluate and improve your time management. And so instead of improving your ability to manage your time and starting to take step by step uh, action so that you can tweak things that are happening in your practice, you instead put things off, white knuckle the work, use dread to fuel you, adrenaline to fuel you to get things done at the last minute, maybe staying up super late, getting very little sleep at night so you can get things done. You don't ask for any help. In fact, you might even beat yourself up and tell yourself, I should be able to figure this out. I'm a smart person. Why can't I figure out time? It's like such a simple thing. I know better, right? We tell ourselves this, at least I did. I'll just share for myself. I should know better. I did this last time. I procrastinated last time and I told myself I'd never do it again. And here I am doing it again. And I would spin and spin and spin in this shame and this self loathing, really, of why am I doing this? Why can't I change? And I would read self help books. I would listen to podcasts. I would feel frustrated because I was hearing things that made sense. And, I'd see maybe a little bit of progress, but it still felt like I was underwater. And then I would keep telling myself, hey, you just need to work harder. If you just work one weekend, you can get yourself caught up. If you just stay X amount of nights, if you just bring so much work home this week, you'll be able to really push through and you'll be able to get it. But I never was able to get ahead, right? Once I get this project done, once I do this thing, I'll finally feel better. No, I never did. I just kept feeling more shame because I felt more and more behind. And the result was as I blocked myself from implementing a tool that would change everything. I blocked myself from being productive. I blocked myself from really really becoming successful in my office the way I wanted to. And I did. I really wanted to keep moving up at the office, or at least I thought I did at the time because I hadn't really thought about it. But when I started building my business, I needed to implement this because there was no way. I was so driven to start a business, and it was so painful for me not to have that business. It was just like this thing in the center of my heart that was just like, I mean, that sounds kind of corny, I know, but like there was just this thing in the center of my heart that was like, you've got to do this. You've got to figure this out. And so I said, okay, I'm going to figure this out. And that was actually the first thing that I worked on with a coach was, how do I do this? How do I figure this out? I thought I was going into coaching to figure out my business. I was going into coaching to figure out my foundation of time management, figuring out how not to talk to myself and be mean to myself all the time. Those were the kinds of things that I was learning. And that's actually what helped me propel my business. So that's where I want to share with you I was. Okay. So I had to shift my mindset because the mindset I had that I was never going to do it, I'd never done it before, blah, 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 that was not changing things. So I needed to shift. And so what I want to offer to you is that you don't have to suddenly say, oh my gosh, I believe in myself. I can do this calendar. It's going to be amazing. I actually think that might be a disservice because we can't just, not can't, but it's more difficult for us to just thought switch, to change from believing what we've believed for maybe 40 years and then switching over to something that is totally new. So if you've been, wanting to do a workout plan for years and you just haven't done it, your brain is going to tell you, I can't do it. It's never happened before. That's normal. And then if you're trying to go to, I'm going to do it, let's just do it, let's go. And then you have one off day, your brain's going to revert. Like there's no safety for any failure there. So if you're not creating safety for yourself and doing what we're talking about in this podcast, of course you're going to revert to the old you and not take any more action towards creating the new you. You're not being the person that you need to be to create that new habit. Creating safety is one of the ways of being you must be now in order to create your future. It's all about who we are. So let's take a look at how I switched. And I kind of was thinking about how I really did that. And it really was instead of that blame, instead of feeling like I was worried or anxious or anything like that, I had to get curious. I had to get curious about why I was doing what I was doing, not blaming myself, just being interested, just being, in that state of wonder, like, I wonder why I do that, or I wonder if there's a better way of doing that. So I came up with a few questions that can maybe get you into curiosity, and those questions are, I wonder what I need to do to improve. What step can I take right now to improve? What step can I take to maybe just point me in the right direction? I wonder why I'm doing that. Like, it's okay, whatever it is that you're doing, right? Just not judging yourself for it, just getting super curious. And this is what that feeling of curiosity, that when you're being in curiosity does, it changes all of your actions. Because when I got into curiosity and interest and wonder, I started to learn the steps that I needed to take. I would listen in a different way. I actually sought help and listened to that person. And then I just said, okay, I'm just going to do what they tell me to do. And I'm just going to do it one step at a time. We're just going to do that step. And I didn't look at my work as this big picture anymore. I just said, it's just one step at a time. I don't even need to do any of the other steps. I just need to start with this step. And then every time I would see myself maybe not do the step of the calendar that I was, quote unquote, supposed to do, then I would get curious again and I'd say, I wonder why I didn't do that. What would make that easier for me? Let me give you an example. So, all the time, what will happen when I work with a client is you'll learn the skill of calendar, right? You learn the skills, and then the next week, maybe you don't do the calendar. And then what we work on is creating that safety for you to keep going. And then the next week, you do part of the calendar. And the week after that, you do more of the calendar. And then pretty soon, after just a couple months, so many of my clients make it a habit. And do they do it quote I'm going to put this in quotes perfectly? No, and you don't have to see results. That's a beautiful thing. And you can tweak it in a way that works for you and your schedule and what's particular to your practice area. And I think that we can block ourselves by telling ourselves we can't do it because it's this practice area or whatever, or I can't do it because this is just it feels too restrictive. And I actually thought that before too, but instead I dropped that thought and I said, okay, I wonder what I can do so that it doesn't feel so restrictive. Like, can I work within these parameters to make it less restrictive? And sure enough, I found all kinds of ways. I gave myself beautiful amounts of time to do things that I wanted, and that helped me make it so that I was designing a calendar that worked for me. So we just want to understand that curiosity allows us to take different actions. It allows us to evaluate without judgment. So you can maybe one week you notice yourself not giving yourself the time that you need and it feels really restrictive. And instead of giving up, you just say, okay, well, this week, what will I do differently with the calendar to make it feel less restrictive? What am I going to do? So that's the beauty of this. Another thing that happens when you are curious instead of feeling worry or anxiety or fear is you start being kind to yourself, even if you don't do everything on your calendar. That is a huge thing because when we're mean to ourselves, we don't want to do anything. We fall into procrastination and shame. And we want to be able to create that space where we feel safe to make fails, to not do those things and keep going. You evaluate some more, you feel some feelings of failure, and then because you're not blaming yourself and you keep coming back to that feeling of curiosity and safety, you're like, "Ah, yeah, okay, everything's gonna be okay, right? I'm just gonna keep going, right? I can do this. I can learn the process, right? What is the process again? Right. I skip a week of the calendar. Let me come back to the process. Let me get curious about why I didn't do it last week. And then let's see if we can problem solve for it. So then I'm going to feel uncomfortable some weeks, and that's okay. Like I'm going to put things on my task list or put it on my calendar, things like delegating work or, asking for help or learning new skills and putting more rest on the calendar than feels comfortable for me. And then I'm going to do it even while feeling the discomfort, and I'm going to get curious about those feelings instead of telling myself I shouldn't feel that way or trying to buffer with eating food or going to talk with people in the office or watching TV or going scrolling online. Those are the things that become possible when we get curious. And the result becomes I enabled myself to create safety to do something new, the calendar, and to keep improving my skills and my abilities to manage my time. And now I get to share this with you. How fabulous is that? Okay. So now let me give you the example of leaving my job because I know a lot of lawyers I talk to, they either want to start a totally different business or they want to start their own practice and or they're thinking about some other big transition. So if you are going through this, I just want you to know these thoughts apply to you too. And anything new that I'm talking about here, you're going to hear so many parallels between this example that I'm giving you and the example that I just gave you when it came to using a calendar. Just know anytime you try something new, this is what your brain does. Okay. So here is the circumstance for me leaving my job. And my thoughts were, oh my gosh, what am I doing? What if I make a mistake? What if I can't do it? I don't know how to make money. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do that. My brain was so full of self doubt. Like I just felt self-doubt so hard and it felt awful. I felt like it also felt like I was a failure. Like I should be able to do this. I was watching all these other people doing these big things, starting businesses, and I thought, "Oh my gosh, I should be further ahead. I should be doing more." Do you hear the parallels with the calendar? This is just how our brain works. It's okay. It doesn't mean anything's gone wrong. We're just learning how to work with our brain to create safety. So when I thought those things, I felt self doubt. And then what were the actions? Well, pretty similar to starting the calendar process. I spun out, right? Just ruminating. I didn't plan anything. I didn't look at my money situation. I worried constantly. I didn't take any action. So I wasn't selling anything. I wasn't, working on those money making activities in my business. Didn't use my calendar. It was if I did my calendar, I would just totally ignore it. I would have these big blind spots. I would just not even look at my calendar. And then I didn't, ask for help. And that was a big one for me because I had always been taught you shouldn't ask for help. You should never rely on someone. Well, that's a bunch of baloney. Okay. I was just, that was brainwashed into me as a child. And I love the idea of being self sufficient, but being self sufficient and then self torturing yourself by not asking for help are two very different things. So my brain took that instruction, as a child as you should be totally self-reliant and you should never, ever, ever ask anybody for anything. And maybe that was my parents, well, my dad's experience of life, but my experience of life is that so many more people are willing to help me when I ask for help. Now, I don't just ask anybody for help because if I'm sharing something vulnerable, I'm not going to ask them for help. But if it's something that I need and I feel comfortable with that person, or maybe just a little uncomfortable, but I think they'll give me a good response, I now ask for help. So it just, whew. Anyway, when I didn't do those things, when those were the actions I was taking, I made it take so much longer to leave my job. It made really like it felt like I was struggling to build my business. It was just a struggle. And it was totally my mindset. So let's take the same circumstance, leaving my job, and where I needed to get my brain to create safety so that I could leave my job. So my feeling of calm certainty was the feeling I wanted to have. And so for you, when you think about this, I want you to just kind of ask yourself what creates calm certainty in your body? What would you need to believe? And do something you can believe right now. So for me, thoughts like it's working, it's happening, that helped me because I could see evidence that my business was growing, that my finances were good. Another thought that I really like that was it's a very simple baby step thought to for me to get into on anything is I can figure this out one step at a time. I don't need to have it all figured out. I just need to know one step ahead. And when I was able to create that calm certainty from believing those things, from practicing believing those things, because it takes practice. It doesn't just, you can't just snap a finger. You need to have consistency and repetition. Like that's why I made this a 12-week program for timepiece for lawyers. That's why I have a 6-month program for one-on-one, right? It's like, this is what I want to do. I need to have repetition. I need to be able to rewire my brain, and that takes me consciously changing and shifting it. So when I felt that feeling of calm certainty, I behaved completely differently. I focused on one task at a time. I used my calendar to prioritize the money making activities in my business. I served my clients. I focused on them more than I focused on myself. Because when we focus out on others versus our mind drama, it automatically calms us down because now your brain's focused on something else. When I did worry or doubt myself, I didn't make it mean anything about me or my abilities. I sat with it and I allowed myself to feel it and know that it was okay, that I was safe, that everything was going to be okay, and reminded me of that thought. I can figure this out one step at a time. I noticed my emotions. I noticed when I felt self doubt or I felt defeated or I felt shame. And so many of us are disconnected from that. And so I needed to reconnect myself with those feelings so I could feel them completely. And when I could feel them completely, those feelings didn't dictate my actions. I was no longer avoiding things, I was taking things head on. I didn't beat myself up. Or if I did, I didn't beat myself up for beating myself up, right? I just noticed it and said, it's okay. I understand. Let's keep going. I really made friends with myself to create that safety. I was kind to myself. I practiced all of this over and over again. And then I just kept going one step at a time. I just kept going, just like with the calendar, one step at a time. I noticed when I was procrastinating and I said, it's okay, just one step at a time. What's the one next thing I can do right now? And I got help. I got help for this. So, doing all of that enabled me to create safety for myself to leave my job. But if I didn't work on my mindset, I could never do that. It was absolutely painful because I waited to get help for a really long time and it would have gone a lot faster and gotten that kind of like that boost from getting help. But everything happened the way that it was supposed to, and I learned things the hard way, so you don't have to. So, if you're trying something new right now, if you want to create something new, know that you need to create safety for yourself to do those big things. Go back and listen to this podcast again because I think that it's easy to just hear things once and it hits you maybe, a little bit, but if you listen to this again, you're going to have a roadmap to doing anything in your life. You're going to have a roadmap to doing those things that your brain might be telling you right now are impossible. And if you want to work with me, there are two ways you can work with me. If you want to work with me for one on one, book a strategy session with me. Go to dinacataldo.com/strategy session. I have a few spots available. So if that's something that really interests you, please go ahead and do that. And then if you want to work with me in a group setting, if you want to work with amazing lawyers who are all struggling with the same thing and all have the so much in common, right? Doesn't matter what practice area you're in. If you resonate with this, you notice I didn't talk to you about your particular practice area. I talked about me and I was a criminal prosecutor. So this is going to work for your area too. It works with all my one-on-one clients. It works with oh my gosh. So come to timepiece for lawyers. Go to dinacataldo.com/timepiece. That's dinacataldo.com/timepiece, PEACE, and we will work together. Be sure to do that before August 31st, though, because we are going to close doors on that day. All right, my friend, I hope you have a fabulous rest of your week. Sending you so much love. Bye.